All right, welcome everyone. Once again, if you are here for the tobacco use intervention promising practices and programs, you are in the right place. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We have a lot to cover, so we'll be going from 9 to 11 this morning, but we have a lot of great share outs from school districts who are using some of these great intervention programs. Once again, if you have not participated in our poll this morning, please consider taking that poll to kind of add to some of the discussions that we're going to have later. So let's get started. Real quick, if you are new here, just a little bit about the Tobacco Use Prevention Education Unit here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. We are a team of about 5 who help all schools and LEAs in LA County when it comes to building capacity, providing professional training for staff, facilitating successful collaboration, and also community and family engagement, which is a new piece that our unit has just added to our team. So we do parent presentations, student presentations, staff training. We do tabling at some of your events. We also offer educational materials for free if you are interested in that and you have your own event coming up. Our information is down at the bottom if you want to contact us or take a look at our website to see some of the other offerings that we have. This is our team. With us today, we have Mark Hernandez, who is our program coordinator. He will be managing the chat throughout our 2-hour webinar. If you have questions, comments, feel free to drop them at any time into the chat, and Mark will be answering those. My name is Linnell Lujan. I am your presenter today. With us, we also have our senior program specialist for the Tier 2 grant, Derek Reed. And we also have our senior program activity specialist, Kira McNeely, who does our community and family engagement. And then our awesome division secretary, Jasmine Martinez. Today, once again, feel free to utilize that chat for any sort of questions or comments. This webinar is being recorded, so do not fret if you need to leave early or if you feel like this was a great learning experience and you wanted to share it with a colleague. All of our supporting materials and recordings will be sent to participants after the webinar is over, and you will be able to access some of the resources that we talk about today. So what we're going to go over very briefly at first is alternatives to suspension, why they're important, why we use them when addressing vaping on campus. We will talk about some of the programs that are available to LEAs and school districts. And then we will hear from 3 school districts that our unit works closely with to see how they use some of these programs and other policies and procedures when it comes to addressing vaping on campus. We'll end with some resources from our office that you can use and utilize in this work that you do. So let's get started with alternatives to suspension. You were asked to participate in a poll. And you were asked 6 different questions. These questions had a lot to do with what Ed Code says. What does Ed Code say about possessing tobacco, possessing cannabis, possessing or using tobacco and cannabis, and selling tobacco and cannabis? And sometimes these questions can be a little tricky because, as we know, Ed Code is not always finite. It can be very gray areas. But just for fun, let's take a look and see what our results were. So let me pull that over. All right. So when it comes to possessing or using tobacco for the first time, we had 52% said should not, may came in at 33%, and must 14. When we're talking about cannabis, sorry, we had 10% should not, 70% may, and must at 20%. When it came to possessing or using cannabis for the first time, should not at 65%, none for must. Possessing or using tobacco for the first time with expulsion, we had should not at 80%, may at 20, and none for must. Selling tobacco for the first time, be recommended for expulsion. It looks like may was the winner there. Should not at 20% and must at 15%. And finally, selling cannabis for the first time, may at 65%, must at 30%. So here are the results. Let me switch back over. And as you can see, ed code is am I sharing the right screen? Yes. Ed code is laid out there as to what those answers are in terms of should be suspended, may be suspended, must be expelled, so on and so forth. And we get a lot of questions when working with school districts about this. What does ed code say? How is the wording, interpreted, especially when it comes to cannabis versus tobacco, because we know that those are two completely different things in the eyes of ed code. For your convenience, we have put together a guidance on California Ed Code regarding suspension and expulsion for substance use. You will also find that alcohol and opioids are also included on that form. I believe a link is going to be dropped into the chat for you to be able to access that. All of this is to say that we want to look at intervention in a way that, again, coincides with Ed Code, but our unit is often called on by schools and school districts to support their intervention efforts. We mostly get those calls or those requests when there is a problem, right? We rarely ever get concerns about prevention because we are responding to a problem that has happened and we are looking on how to address that problem. So it's more reactive than proactive. And we're going to look at some of the programs that are available for that. We know that data shows that suspension is a common response to substance use. However, we also know that it furthers inequities and hinders student achievement. For instance, if we look at the DataQuest data, in 2017 and 2018, when Juul becomes very, very popular, we see that suspension rates in Los Angeles County are at 2%, and that statewide it's 3.5%. We notice that the following year is very similar, and then we start to make some progress, right? Those numbers start to go down, and then COVID hits, and there's almost no data. But the thing is that students are at home, they're learning remotely, they have access to these devices. They are coping in unhealthy ways with what is going on in the world. And so when we return back in 2021, 2022, 2023, we see that these numbers start to go up again. 1.7 in Los Angeles County, 2.1 in Los Angeles County, which brings us to current 2023 and 2024. We're starting to see a decrease in suspensions, which is great, but there's still some work to be done, right? And when it comes to suspensions, we know that a person who's been punished is not less inclined to behave in a given way. At best, they learn how to avoid punishment, right? Even further, a student who's struggling to read is not sent home and expected to return reading fluently. So in that sense, why is a student struggling to behave sent home and expected to return behaving decently? That's all to say that when we suspend, when it comes to vaping, we aren't really giving the student any of the skills or the resources that they need to stop the action of vaping. We're basically sending them home to either vape more, or we're telling them, in essence, just don't get caught next time, right? So suspension temporarily relocates substance use, but it doesn't address the root causes. And this can worsen student outcomes. It can even cause a student to use more to the point of addiction. So what are those root causes? We know that it comes in four different entities. The individual, so the student itself inwardly might be coping with anxiety, depression, um, you know, things that are going on in their life. And using a vape can give them a temporary sense of relief. It's very inexpensive. In some cases, it's very easy to obtain. Socially, we know that young people can be influenced by their peers, wanting to belong, wanting to look important or cool. Family dynamics can also play a role. We know that some students can often get these devices by stealing them from family members who are current vapors. And then their environment. How much access do they have to these devices? How much access do they have to seeing these devices being used in music videos, movies, social media, billboards on their way to school, or even how many vape shops do they pass when they go to their basketball practice or their violin practice, right? So all of these factors are root causes of why adolescents use substance use in terms of vaping. The effects of suspending students means that it can lower dropout risks, or it's increased dropout risk and lower GPAs. It can increase depression because the student has gotten in trouble, they are suspended, and they're meant to just cope with that on their own. It can also increase substance use and behavior. So I personally was a secondary teacher, so my students were older, anywhere from 18 or even down to middle school. And a lot of those students, if they had to stay home sick or were suspended, were left home alone. And so if a student is getting caught vaping at school and they are suspended, the chances are they're going to stay home for a day or two and continue to vape. We know that suspension can cause more risk factors, more substance use, and more use on campus. However, when we approach it through prevention and intervention, we know that there are fewer risk factors, less substance use, and in our case, what we are here for is less use on campus. We also know that suspension negatively impacts the school and the school environment, right? School climate and academic outcomes are affected by students who are being suspended. We know that it also attributes to chronic absenteeism, which also is our our average daily attendance. Which brings me to differentiated assistance. One of the indicators for DA is suspension rate. And so we really want to look at some of these suspension rates, which of course can be for other reasons as well. But if we're suspending students for vape use, vape possession, again, that's adding to our suspension rate and it's adding to one of these indicators. So with that said, the 2P unit here at LACO, our goal is to move schools across this continuum, to take schools from that suspension, punitive, disciplinary policies, and hopefully into the ultimate goal of alternatives to suspension with tiered supports, resources teaching students the skills of resiliency, healthy coping skills. And so that is what some of these programs are going to cover. When we have an ideal response to substance use, we know that it will deter students from using on campus, hopefully from using at all. Um, we want to build their skills and their knowledge to change that behavior. So, no more are the days of just say no to drugs, right? We can say just say no to vaping, but students are more impacted when they know why, when they know that it negatively affects their health, that tobacco companies are targeting them and manipulating them. So, giving them the knowledge of that will have more chances of changing their behavior. It maintains a positive school climate and connectedness when we are offering these supports rather than suspending. It's a better use of time and resources. And we communicate these norms, expectations, and consequences clearly. So, do our families and caregivers know what those processes are? Do the students know? Do the teachers know? We sometimes get a lot of questions from teachers of, I send a student to the office and then they send them right back. And it's because the teachers aren't being told that middle part that the student has been signed up for, an intervention program, that their parents have been notified. And so what the teacher sees is nothing's being done, but they don't know that there are restorative practices being done that have not been communicated to them. When we talk about tiered supports, we have a few suggestions when it comes to these three different tiers. Today, we're going to talk about intervention. We have different types of intervention programs that we're going to cover today. Those that are facilitated by school staff, so somebody at your school who is trained to do these interventions. Self-paced, so something that a student can be given and they can do asynchronously either in an after-school class, on their own at home, and then facilitated by outside partners. Somebody, a third party that is students are being referred to, and the clinicians are the ones who are providing that intervention and then reporting back to the admin of that school to let them know if the student has successfully completed the program or not. Those facilitated by school staff, we will talk about brief intervention and our healthy futures, which again is led by a staff member, one of which can be in small groups and the other is an individual interview between a student and either a counselor or a mental health intern. YVAPE is one that is facilitated by an outside partner. So this is where you would refer a student. And then self-paced online programs, we're going to go over My Healthy Futures. When it comes to considering programs, we really have to think about which one of these best fits your discipline matrix. How are you going to be able to track these referrals, the completion, the participation? But most importantly, how well do these align with your current resources and staff capacity? For instance, if you do not have the capacity or the staff to be able to train them to carry out these intervention programs, YVAPE, the outside facilitator that you refer a student to, might be the answer to that problem. So without further ado, let's look at some of these intervention programs by representatives of the programs themselves. We're going to start off with Ira Saknoff from Brief Intervention.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about brief intervention. And, one of the things I think I want to share with you is just how I first got involved with brief intervention in the first place. It was around 20 years ago. I was coordinating a tobacco prevention program for the San Francisco schools, and they got a big alcohol prevention and intervention grant. And they, they were looking for someone to help coordinate that program. And they said, "Hey, Ira, would you be willing to do that?" And I said to them, I said, "Well, only if you allowed me to find a program to bring in that we could do here in San Francisco." And they said, "Go forth and find." And this is the program I found over 20 years ago, and I've been training for it for a very long time. And it's a program that I really, really believe in here. So let me share with you a little bit about brief intervention. Basically, what we do is we want to provide a forum, and this is all done one-on-one, old school, one-on-one with people. And we train people to do this. And I think LA County has been having 2 or 3 trainings every single year in brief intervention. So we probably trained a couple of hundred people to do this. And what it is we want to provide a place for people to do some talking about the alcohol and drug use. We want to give them accurate information, but it's not an information-based program, okay? And what we're really trying to do with this program is support people in trying to find out, hey, is any of the things that you're doing, maybe tobacco, maybe alcohol or other drugs, is it impacting you in any negative ways? And that's really what we're doing here, is we're trying to find out in this conversation with them, is it impacting them in any negative ways? And then we want to empower young people to set some goals for themselves and make better informed choices. And a lot of what we do is to utilize motivational interviewing to empower rather than enforce. Okay. And again, and if they're needing further help, we hope that you'll refer them to other services. So brief intervention is a short-term educational conversation counseling type of intervention that usually consists of 2 to 3 sessions with an adult and a young person. Again, and it's aimed at those adolescents who are using tobacco, marijuana, alcohol, or other drugs. And this approach uses motivational interviewing, CBT. As I always like to say, we do not do therapy, but we use a lot of their techniques and also acknowledge the stages of change also in there. So that's a little bit about it. But to talk about what it is BI is for those young people who have a relatively short history of use. And by the way, that short history could be years, but you're not usually working with young people who've been using substances for 12 or 14 years and who are starting to experience some trouble. So there's stuff going on that we know that is happening with young people, but they're not yet dependent or addicted. And a lot of times you won't find that out until you do brief intervention with them. And it's also absolutely okay for a young person to come completely ambivalent about what. So this is not the kind of program where we say to a young person, you must be ready to change, right? No, most of the times the kids come because they're forced to be there, and we're okay with that. So what is BI? BI is 2 usually hour sessions. There's something called the pre-session, which is around 15 minutes. And trying to get the kid to know what we're gonna do in those 2 other sessions. And session 1 is all about building the relationship. And session 2 is really building motivation to support change. And we do have this optional meeting, which is for parents and guardians, okay? And so it's not mandated, but it's optional. And we have very specific principles in our program when we meet with the young person. We want them to know that the program is about them and for them. And the purpose of this program is to see if maybe there may be some better ways, and to let them know we're not going to, change you, and that you're the only person who can change, and we're not there to make them change. Okay. But we are there to talk to them about the possibility of changing and seeing if changing is something they want to do. Okay. And those really are our core principles about brief intervention. The other thing that we really like about BI is that it appeals to young people because we are not telling them what to do. Developmentally, teenagers, they do not like being told what to do. And with this program, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're not going to tell them what to do, which is why we think it's so effective. It's a guided change. And it's really based on these worksheets that we've developed. And the worksheets are asking some very tough questions of them, right? They're asking very, very tough questions. The other thing is that there are so many young people who could use this right now. And what we found is a good 20 to 25% of high school students at this very second could probably use brief intervention. It's also been shown to be incredibly effective. Okay, that's the other thing that's really important. And this picture kind of shows a little bit about who are the people that we're looking to work with. And who BI is really looking for are those people who are mild users and just starting to get into moderate use, and even the very beginning of substantial use. If they are already addicted, they're going to probably need some specialized treatment. But, BI can really work with a large number of young people who are at the beginning, middle, and even get into the very substantial changes. And so those are the people who can benefit from this. The other thing is that brief intervention is research-based. And this research has been done a few times. And they took students who were caught using substances at high schools, and they broke them up into 3 groups. One had no intervention. The other had brief intervention. The other had brief intervention with this additional parent meeting. And what we found out is that 3 months, 6 months, and a year later, what we found out is those students who went through BI had much higher quit rates and were using less substances. Those who had this one additional meeting with the parents even were using less and had higher quit rates. So it's a program that has quite a bit of history behind it and has been around for a while. Now, in order to do this, and again, people who do brief intervention get trained right now. It's in 2 1/2 days, and it's online at this very second. We train people, but this because they need certain skills. Some of the skills in order for this to be effective are the following. You need to be someone who leads and is great at reflective listening. The person conducting needs to be someone who leads with support and empathy. And you need to be someone who's willing to compliment people. Even though a young person may feel like they're sent to you or forced to be there and that they're being punished, we do not view this as punishment. We're complimentary in the work that we do with young people. The other thing is you have to have the ability to adjust to resistance in order to do this. I'll give you an example. Someone comes in to the meeting and they say something like this: "So stupid, I have to be here and meet with you. Really, I got caught with weed, like that's really a problem?" And as opposed to saying to them, "You know what, you were caught, you got me for 2 sessions, sit down." No. Instead, what I'm going to probably say to someone who's at resistance is something like this: "You know what, it sounds like you don't really think you need to be here. I got an idea. How about if we try to get through this quickly?" And so you have to have the ability to adjust to the resistance. The other thing, what we're trying to do in this program is you have to have the ability to create cognitive dissonance. And the worksheets are going to so help you do that with a young person. What I like to say is what we're trying to do in this program is we're trying to get a kid to go, maybe it's not all good. And then if we get them to there, we then have something to work with. The other thing that's really important to note, that we accept a harm reduction strategy if that's what the student chooses to do. Okay, and that's really important. We spend a whole lot of time on this. And by the way, does anyone know what the best harm reduction strategy for a young person is? It's not to use anything at all. Sometimes people get confused when we say harm reduction strategy. What does that mean? Is that, the best thing a young person can do in a harm reduction strategy is the least harm that will happen to them is to not use it all. But if a student is unable or unwilling to do that, we will work with them on other goals that they choose to work with. And that's really an important piece of the brief intervention. A couple of other points here. The main objective of this brief intervention is to help the young people recognize the dangers of their drug use, ideally resulting in changing their substance using behaviors. And our purpose is to promote the consideration of behavior change. And it's our job when we do BI with a young person to help them get through the stages of change. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to find out what they're interested in doing, what they're willing to do, and work with them with coming up with plans to be able to make a change. A couple of other key points. With this work, when we do harm, it does not condone use, and instead it encourages the reduction or cessation of use. I'll give you just a quick example of that. We're working with young people who are caught on campus, and sometimes we'll get a young person to say, you know what, I'm never going to bring this to school ever again. I don't plan on using it at school ever again. You know, I would then say to them, so it sounds like what your goal is on your way to school, and at school, your goal is not to use at all. Did I get that right? Even though they didn't say on their way to school, I'm still going to try to get more with that. And so what we're trying, but what I will never do is ever say to them, ever, so your goal is not to use at school, but this weekend, party. No high-fiving drug use ever. But that's the conversations we're trying to have with young people, is to see what they're willing to do in this work. And we always like to say freedom of choice comes with consequences. You know, comes with freedom of consequences. Someone gets caught again, there's further consequences for them. It's the how we do this that is so important, which is why it's not a 1 hour or 2 hour training. You know, everyone who does brief intervention has to go through a 7-hour training where we teach you how to use the worksheets, which are so critically part of what we do here. And a couple of things just in our approach, you know, behavior change goals are always individualized. And while the worksheets are all the same, it's the same questions, what their goals are different for every single young person. The feedback that we give to a young person is based on where the individual is at with their, you know, alcohol and drug use. And any behavior change that reduces harm is a positive result. It's never what I would want ever for the young person. I would like for all young people to not use and choose that. But if they don't, and they're willing to still make changes, we're on the right road, okay? And in order to do this work, you have to be non-judgmental, non-confrontational in your approach. And again, this is a one-on-one session with a young person, okay? And that's how we do that. It's all based on these three, you know, pillars here: stages of change, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Again, we're not doing therapy, but it's based on that. And as you've heard probably all of us talk about here, motivational interviewing, right? That's the style of how we do this. And it's not going to be surprising. It's the style of how all three of these really work with young people, because it just makes so much sense. And, you know, so we're doing a lot of open-ended question asking. We're doing a lot of affirming of people. And even, you know, and it's really important that we're not doing this at them. What we need, brief intervention is all about putting that, I can't, nope, put it away. And instead, we're going to say, hey, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for filling out that worksheet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you may be the only person that uses those two words with them that whole week. And then you're going to reflective listen. You're going to summarize to them what they've said. And that's kind of what we do. You know, in the first session, there were actually 6 worksheets, hence the name of the training, brief. You know, we're not spending hours on this, but, you know, there's these 6 worksheets that we are going through with people, right? And we're having like 5 to 7 minute conversations based on the answers that they've come up with. So, you know, that's how this works, and that's what we do. The second session, really, there are some worksheets, but it's really about the conversation and trying to develop a plan to assist the young person in reducing or eliminating substances in their life. We're going to teach them a 5-step plan, what to do when you get in situations where substances is going to be offered to you. And we come up with an emergency plan with them. Okay, so it's really these two main conversations. Again, they are very, very worksheet based. And there's some information where you can contact me, but really more importantly is, again, for the last 5 years or so, LA County of Office of Education has sponsored these trainings. And you could contact Mark and LACOE for more information on that. And if you want a district training where you have 20 to 40 people, you can contact EMT, whose property this is. I also thought what I'd want to do is share with you for 1 second here is, let me just share a sample here of the worksheets here of what we're talking about here and the conversations that we're having. So I'm going to pull that up for you for a second here. So this is just an example of the worksheets that we have here. And so in terms of that leads the conversations, this is the first worksheet. What are some of the reasons you like to use alcohol or drugs? What are some things you don't like? What are the good things about continuing to use as much and as often as you've been are? And you're going to get so many great answers to use to have discussions with that one. What are some things that might not be so good or might get worse? What do your friends think? What do your parents think? And do they impact you? Anyway, there's a total of 9 worksheets that we're doing with the young people. And if we have the parent meeting, there's actually, some worksheets with them. The other thing is we also have all of the worksheets and handouts in Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and English. And so, if you have people who are working with that group, but again, it's a one-on-one with the student who's been caught. One of the things that makes us a little different and unique is that we don't spend so much time talking about the drugs themselves. It's not a conversation about the substances, but it's about why you use and why you like to use. And do you have any interest in looking at that and making any changes regarding that? So we don't focus on a whole lot of information. I've never found that you give a young person a pamphlet and they say, God, I didn't know this. I'll never do drugs again. Information is important, but when you're trying to get someone to make a change, it's the motivation that you're looking for and letting them know, you're going to decide what you're going to do and what changes you're going to make. And, we're going to spend some time chatting to see if you're interested in making any of those changes and what it might be. But what we find is when you start asking those questions of young people and they write it down, you could have great conversations and hopefully get to the, maybe it's not all good, and have a conversation that will really help with a young person.
So as you can see on the screen, LACO does offer these trainings for free. We do them, I believe, about 3 times a year. I believe for this year we are done offering our trainings, but we do renew them every year. So at the end of this training, we're going to give you the link to where we have all of our upcoming trainings, and you can bookmark that page in order to check out to see any new offerings that we have. And once again, if you are interested in training an entire district, right? Maybe you have 30 staff. You can also contact BI and they would be happy to help you out with that. I will be including all of this information in a follow-up email for you if you'd like to contact BI or if you'd like to contact us for future trainings. Our next
Thank you.
program is going to be given by Scott Gerber. This is the Healthy Futures. So this comes in 2 different forms, the My Healthy Futures and the Our Healthy Futures. One is guided by a staff member, the other is an asynchronous program. So Scott's going to tell us a little bit more about that intervention program.
I'll share my screen, talk a little bit about Healthy Futures. I'm also excited just because YVAPE and brief intervention are programs that I've used quite a bit. And so I love seeing people having as many different interventions and supports in their tool belt as possible, just because all of the data that we have shows that exclusionary discipline, meaning suspending and expelling students, does not generally have the impact and effect of improved attitudes, beliefs, behaviors. It tends to be really, as far as health disparities and health inequities, it increases those, not decreases those. So the more intervention supports we can have, the better for young people. So I'm going to get off my soapbox for a second. I really appreciate Linnell's intro to all of it. So I'm going to talk. I'm with Stanford's REACH Lab, and the REACH Lab is actually part of Stanford's University School of Medicine, and we're in the adolescent and pediatrics department within the School of Medicine. And I'm not going to see my face is big on your screen again, and I don't love that. So I'm going to skip my slide. But I was a school site elementary and alternative school educator. I was a district office as a student services coordinator for 21 years. And then I shared sort of Mark's role at a county office of education for 7 years in Alameda County. So I have a lot of work in schools and districts and counties working around tobacco prevention, education, cannabis education, and awareness and intervention supports. I'm sharing this slide because it goes a lot with what Linnell had shared as far as kind of the products and trends that you're seeing. And one of the things that I love the fact that you shared kind of the name recognition of Elf Bar and trying to change their name to kind of get people so they get to skirt the issue and get around it. But the one thing I will share on this slide is that there's a lot of times that people don't understand the amount of nicotine that's in these devices. And so the effect that when Juul first came out and they were talking about their one Juul pod had about the equivalent of 37 cigarettes worth of tobacco or nicotine in it. These Elf bars that cost about 16 to 17 bucks have the equivalent of about 590 cigarettes worth of nicotine. It's just night and day difference when you're comparing. It's similar to comparing the THC content from cannabis in 1975, where you've got 3 to 5%, or 1980 or 1990, even 3 to 5% THC, versus now when you're talking 30, 50, 80% THC content. So just looking at this, and this is information I'm happy to share as well. Healthy Futures fits in with our general, the REACH Lab has prevention and tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports. I'm not really going to talk about our tier 1, You and Me Together, Vape Free, and Smart Talk materials, because we're really talking about interventions. But I will share that we do have kind of those tier 1 all the way through, and I appreciate Linnell and Mark sharing that out with all of y'all. Again, tier 1, kind of health, safety first is kind of a tier 1.5 for alternative schools and really comprehensive. But Healthy Futures is really the one we're talking about today. And within all of our content, there are pre and post surveys embedded in that. I do know that student information systems in districts and counties can make it really challenging to find your data, to know how many students you provided prevention and intervention resources for. So we have embedded pre and post surveys in our interventions, which I'll talk about. So Healthy Futures, what is it? So Healthy Futures is really, it's based on motivational interviewing strategies, which I know is a big part of brief intervention and one of the kind of the foundational pieces that got us to Healthy Futures. Motivational interviewing, stages of change, cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's really intended for students who've been found in possession of tobacco or cannabis products. It could be an e-cigarette, a vape pen, it could be a blunt or some other tobacco or cannabis product. And it could also be used for students who are trying to quit. So within it, again, kind of looking at that cognitive behavioral therapy, motivation, motivational interviewing in stages of change, really trying to help the young person move from the behavior that you're not wanting to see on campus and the unhealthy behavior to what are some healthier alternatives. So there's actually, within Healthy Futures, it's really a suite of interventions. There are actually 4 different components to it. There are 2 components related to nicotine and vaping, and there are 2 components related to cannabis. The first one for nicotine, called My Healthy Futures Nicotine, and then there's also a My Healthy Futures Cannabis, and that's a self-paced, self-guided, and I'll walk you through and show you a sneak peek of something that Linnell actually and the team from LACO really encouraged us to move forward with. So we currently have a Canvas slide deck that is what facilitates the self-paced My Healthy Futures, but we're looking at a modification to that, which I think Linnell will appreciate because she really gave us some great feedback as we were building this out. So we have My Healthy Futures Nicotine, My Healthy Futures Cannabis, and we have Our Healthy Futures Nicotine and Our Healthy Futures Cannabis. And the Our Healthy Futures is that adult-guided, adult-led, either one-on-one or small group intervention. So I'll show you a quick live walkthrough of our Healthy Futures, the My Healthy Futures version. So I'm going to pop that up and bring that over onto my shared screen. So hopefully you're seeing, I'm going to look at Linnell's eyes to see if she's seeing the new screen that I just slid over. All right, excellent. All right, so it's gamified in some ways. The students can't move forward or backwards on the slides without completing the task on that slide. So as they get started in it, they'll come in, they'll take the pre-survey, it opens in its own window. One of the pre and post-survey components makes it so that when the student is assigned this intervention by a teacher or administrator or counselor at their school site, that teacher or administrator or counselor has a code that links the student to that administrator or teacher or counselor. So the students take their pre-survey, they come back, they continue in the course. As they work through the course, it really has a workbook that they work through that they can take notes on. They can do it electronically. They can also do it on paper copy. And it really helps them to think about what are some of my triggers? What are some of the things that go well when I'm using my substance? What are some of the challenges I'm facing when I'm smoking or vaping or using cannabis? So it really has them think through some of those pieces. So as they go through the course, they can't move forward without first clicking on each of the icons. So there's no ability to move forward in the course until they've really looked and unlocked each of the pieces of it. So that's a quick, I'm not going to go all the way through the course, but as they go through the videos, as they go through each of the components, they need to click on, and there's also, and I'm not playing the sound for it, but there's a little game sound that's playing in the background, which gets very annoying if I'm training on it. But if the students are doing it, it just kind of gets them moving as they're doing it. It also has voiceover. So for students who might not access some of the content by reading it, being able to have it read to them can be really helpful for some of the students as well. So giving them that option of having the sound on so they can be able to hear the text being spoken to them. All right, so I'm going to come back to the course. And so that's the My Healthy Futures. That's a self-paced version. You can assign it to the course student, give them the URL for the course, give them your teacher code, and then they can take that course. Usually takes around 60 to 90 minutes for the students to complete the course. And after they do it, they receive a certificate of completion so that they know that they've completed it. And then you, as whoever assigned it to them, also gets a notification that little Scotty has completed the My Healthy Futures intervention. So they get a certificate of completion and you get notified that they've completed the course. Again, My Healthy Futures is self-paced, self-guided for the student. It's online. And these are the steps that I just talked through about the fact that you provide them with the URL, you provide them with your teacher or administrator code, they take the course, and then they receive a certificate of completion when they get to the end. And again, I'm not going to talk too much about the data dashboard right now. That is something I can share with you either in the breakout at the end or at some point, but you get your own teacher code that makes it so the pre and post survey data you're able to see and collect both at the site level, but also in your district level and your county level to be able to support the work that you're doing and to report out on kind of change in attitude, change in belief, change in behavior for the students. The handbook that I talked about that the students work through, I'm going to tell you right now, it's a two-sided PDF that you can print out. I will share that the first time I printed it out and tried to put it together, it was like making a cootie catcher or origami or what. I could not figure out how to cut it. I ended up cutting it into 4 squares and then stapling it together. You will benefit from the fact there's actually a video on our site that takes about 30 seconds to watch, and it explains how to cut this up. It's only one cut, but I could not figure it out. And I ended up not building a cootie catcher. If you don't know what that is, again, I can explain that later, but it's something I have not done in 40 plus years, and I couldn't figure out how to cut and fold this. And again, this is sort of on our data dashboard, a place where you'd be able to see which students actually completed the intervention, and the students get a certificate of completion. So that was kind of an overview of assigning the course to the students. They go on, they log on, they take the course, and then, and Linnell sort of talked about this, but whether it's My Healthy Futures or Our Healthy Futures, whether it's brief intervention, whether it's YVAPE, any of those, I strongly encourage there to be someone at the school site who has a conversation with the student after they complete the intervention to be able to say, we want you here. We value you, you're important to us. The behavior, we can't have that on campus, but we want you here because those students need to feel wanted and welcomed, not you were bad, you made a mistake, we don't want you here, kind of exclusionary again. So with any intervention that we're talking about, having some kind of debrief with the student afterwards is really important. So again, Our Healthy Futures is the adult-guided, adult-led intervention. And there's a 2-hour version and a 4-hour version of it. And really the biggest difference between the 2-hour and the 4-hour is how much time you give the students to process the information. Again, as you're working through stages of change and cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing, giving them time to write and reflect and leave and come back after the first session with you and talk about, okay, you talked about the fact that it was stressful in the morning going to your first period class or whatever was happening in the morning. You wrote down a couple of strategies to how to deal with that and how you were going to do something different than grabbing your vape pen or grabbing your cannabis or whatever it is. How are those strategies working for you? All right, what are we going to do next? So again, using the longer version, like the 4-hour version, really gives you time to process with those students and gives them time to practice it. And again, the 2-hour version and 4-hour version, I certainly don't encourage a Saturday school, only because when you talk about the idea of stages of change, and you could talk about it with grief and loss the same way. You can't tell somebody to process their grief and loss stages in 4 hours and say, okay, you're over it now. You've had 4 hours to process. They need time. And so working with students, I would certainly encourage you to use multiple sessions with the student, whether it's half-hour sessions, 8 half-hour sessions, or 4 1-hour sessions, whatever works for you and your site and for your students. There is a facilitator guide built into it that kind of walks you through very much like a lesson plan that says, this is what's on slide 1, and here's what you might say to the students and what their responses might be as they go through slide 1 or slide 2. So it talks you through that. And that facilitator's guide can be really helpful, especially the first time that you're doing it, really helping you to understand what was intended behind the slides. And again, that cootie catcher origami, handbook, we would definitely encourage you to use that with the students because it gives them a place to reflect their thoughts and feelings as you're going through the intervention. All right, so I'm going to stop my screen share. I will drop in into the chat if you want more information. There, you can definitely get more information in here and click on the QR code, and I will send you additional electronic copies of everything. I know that Linnell has them, as does the rest of the LACO team, but if you want more information, I'm happy to share that.
All right. So yes, I will once again be sending resources and all of the information after this webinar. There will be a Google folder with all of the resources shared today, and the email will also include contact information for each one of our presenters. Our last program that we're going to cover
I'll share
today is going to be YVAPE. Brianna Linneman from YVAPE is going to explain this program, which is a referral program. So again, this is if you do not have the staff or the capacity, you would refer a student to the clinicians at YVAPE.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. My name is Brianna Linneman, and I'm the project manager of YVAPE, which stands for Youth Vaping Alternative Program Education. YVAPE is a program with Kick It California at UC San Diego Health. So just to give you a quick overview, YVAPE is a free alternative to suspension program focused on phone and video coaching support for students who are found with or under the influence of nicotine or marijuana at school. This program is available to California public schools who have students 12 years and older, and it's available in both English and Spanish. So I'll just briefly touch on data security, particularly since we're an external organization. Essentially, security of client information is of paramount importance to us. Both Kick It California and UC San Diego Health are HIPAA covered entities. So we have to comply with HIPAA privacy, security, and high-tech breach final rules. If you are interested in finding out more about our data security, you can follow this URL. And then we also have a consent component, which I'll talk a bit more about in a couple slides. But essentially, schools must obtain consent from the student before YVAPE can contact them. So our goals are to support a decrease in recidivism and suspensions among students found with nicotine or marijuana at school, educating students about nicotine and marijuana, providing help to students who want to work on nicotine cessation. This really is only if they're interested. As you said, we're a tier 2 program, so we're more about the intervention aspect. But we can help with nicotine cessation if students are interested. We also provide students, and we'd like to at least provide students in schools with a positive experience, and just to be there for schools who may not have an in-house program in place, or who would just like an additional option for their students. So before referring your students to YVAPE, we ask that schools register with us. And you can do this simply just by sending an email to our support email address, which is yvape-support@health.ucsd.edu, and just designating a school site contact. And so we have schools register because we provide them with a welcome packet, and this includes an explanation of student eligibility and the YVAPE steps. It includes our PDFs of our flyers and brochures, and it also includes a letter explaining the program to staff that the school site contact can distribute at school. So this is an overview of the YVAPE steps. So the first step is enrollment, then there's the initial call, there's a videos and discussion portion, and then a follow-up call. So I'll talk about each step next. So the school first needs to determine eligibility, which requires that the student is 12 years or older, was found with or under the influence of nicotine or marijuana at school, has a parent or guardian who provides permission for participation for students. This is only for those who are 12 to 17-year-olds. 18-year-old students can provide their own consent. And then also has an email address that allows external emails and access to a phone. The school then decides whether to use DocuSign or a PDF consent form. So if you choose DocuSign, the consent form will be sent to the student email address first, and then the parent or guardian of 12 to 17-year-old students upon the student signing. If you choose a PDF consent form, you'll need to collect a PDF of the signed consent form, which is downloadable from our website, yvape.org, and then email it to that support email address. Regardless of the consent method, the school site contact really is the one responsible for ensuring the consent forms are completed. So like with DocuSign, if we haven't received the consent form, the school site contact receives notification of that, I think after 48 hours and then after 96. Essentially because we can't contact the student until the consent forms are received. Then the school enrolls the student on our website, and then upon the consent form being submitted, an enrollment email will be sent to the student, parent, and school, and then the student also receives a text message. So here's our website. Hold on, let me switch this over, which is also available in Spanish. So to enroll a student, the first thing you do is right here, decide if you want DocuSign or PDF consent form. As I mentioned, if you choose the PDF version, then you just need to go down to the section on school personnel and click where downloadable forms, and it'll pull this up for you. And then, like I said, if you choose DocuSign, DocuSign will just email it to the student. And then you just fill out the school site contacts information, and then the next page will go through student information, which just includes the same information as well as what substances that they were found with and what language that they prefer. And then you provide parent information if it's a 12 to 17-year-old. I don't believe I'll have time today, but if you'd like to watch the YVAPE videos, they can be found at the bottom of the page. And then our About Us page also provides the KICKIT California services for cessation. And then our resources page, which is new, this is for our cessation program that schools can enroll students in. We have our resources here, so our flyer, brochure, our sample calls. So I'll be playing a few minutes of one of our sample calls today, but we won't have time for the whole thing. So you can find the rest of the call right here. And then we also just have some external nicotine resources and marijuana resources as well that we recommend if students or schools or parents would like to learn more. Okay. So before I get into the call procedures and topics, I thought I'd just briefly touch on coach training. So our coaches receive 60 hours of in-house training. This comes in various formats, which involves lecture, discussion, role playing. This is then followed by an intensive 1-month apprenticeship, which is supervised by one of our coaching supervisors. They also have weekly meetings to discuss cases. They also undergo additional training focused on working with youth. And then they have continuing education that they go through. So the second step of YVAPE is the initial call. So the student has the option to schedule a time for their initial call, and if they want a voice or video Zoom call. Calls can be completed between 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. During or after school on weekdays, and then 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. If the student does not schedule a call or misses their appointment, a YVAPE coach will proactively call them, typically around 4, 6, 7, and 8 p.m. on weekdays and between 1 and 4 p.m. on Saturdays for up to 7 call attempts. And then a reminder email is sent to the student, parent, and school after 5 missed calls, so you know that we've been trying to reach them. And that email also includes our phone number in case they want to call into us. And again, the student always also receives a text message. The initial call tends to last around 15 to 20 minutes, but the student can talk to the coach for as long as they want. So the YVAPE coaching topics approach is focused on connecting with the students. So the coach kind of begins with attempting to engage in some rapport building. The student will talk about how they ended up in YVAPE, what they'd like to learn. their nicotine and marijuana use behavior, their kind of likes and dislikes about nicotine and marijuana use, health regarding nicotine and marijuana, and then their motivation and confidence about cessation. So a lot of this is using kind of motivational interviewing, trying to get the student to think about their behavior and think through what changes they may like to make. And then the marijuana and nicotine protocols are very similar. The only difference is some of the psychoeducational points on health, of course, are going to be unique to each. So here's a mock recording of the initial call. I think I could probably listen to 3 to 5 minutes.
Hello. Hi, hello. I'm calling from YVAPE and I'm looking for Jake.
Oh, yeah, this is Jake.
Hi, Jake. I'm one of the coaches. I'm calling from the program your school signed you up for to talk about your vaping. Is this an okay moment for you?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, great. So really what we'll be doing is I have a few questions just so I could get to know you a bit and see if there's any way I can be helpful. However, what we discuss, it will be kept confidential. So that means that anything we talk about, it stays private, and an exception would be if there were a clear danger to you or someone else. And also our calls, they are recorded and may be monitored for quality assurance. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. And also there is a chance that your parent or your guardian will want to know what we talked about in our call. If that happens, I'll just go ahead and encourage them to ask you about it. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. And also I'm a health educator, which means that I can give you general information about tobacco and health, but this isn't a substitute for talking to a healthcare professional. I recommend you talk to your medical provider about your medical needs and treatment.
Okay.
And before we get started here, it is helpful for me to know what you were using in your vape when you got in trouble at school. Did your vape have nicotine and marijuana, or was it just the cannabis marijuana?
Just the nicotine.
Just the nicotine? Okay. And you're in 11th grade, is that right?
Yeah, I'm 11th grade.
How has that been going for you?
It's going okay. Just waiting for summer break to start. Have a lot of projects to finish.
Yeah, the final grind right before the celebration of the summer break.
Yeah.
That's good. That's exciting. And what was the situation that happened that led you to having to talk to us?
So I got caught using a vape in the bathroom,
Mhm.
and then I tried to hide it, but they searched me and found a device on me.
Mhm. And was that device yours or someone else?
It was mine.
Your device? Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that with me. I know it's not always easy to talk about. And what do you already know about this program?
They told me I would learn more things about vaping,
Mhm.
maybe some videos, but I don't really know too much.
Okay. Yeah, so let me go ahead and explain what will happen. So you're going to go ahead and have 2 calls with us. One today and one after you have a chance to watch a few videos on vaping. And then to complete the program, we're going to go ahead and send you a link after the final call just to answer a few online questions about your experience with YVAPE, and then that would be it. And just to let you know, we're not here, to lecture you or try to make you quit. It's just really to open up that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I am curious.
Okay, so that kind of gives you a little sample. The call recording is approximately 13 minutes. So if you'd like to listen to the rest when they start actually getting into some more of the coaching topics, you can find that on our resources page. It'll be the same call. So then after they complete that initial call with their coach, the third step is the videos and discussion. So we do encourage parents to participate in this activity. However, parental participation is entirely voluntary and students will not be penalized if their parent does not participate. Instead, sometimes like schools counselor will engage in the videos and discussion with the student, or they may watch them with like a sibling. And if nothing else, our coaches will talk through, spend extra time with them on the follow-up call if they didn't have someone to engage with this part of the portion, part of the program with. So there's 7 video topics currently. There's marketing manipulation by the vaping industry, health effects of vaping nicotine, health effects of vaping marijuana, your brain and lungs, understanding motivation, dealing with stress, and personal responsibility. The videos are approximately 2 to 4 minutes apiece. And as I mentioned, they can be found at the bottom of yvape.org. We'll also be launching 2 new videos in just a few weeks on nicotine and mental health, and then asking for help to quit. There's also 8 questions for students and parents to discuss with each other. Like I said, if the parent doesn't participate, a school staff member may, or a YVAPE coach can discuss the questions with the student during the follow-up call. So some examples of the questions are things like, how do you think your life would change if you stopped using nicotine and or marijuana? What changes might you notice in the next few weeks? And what changes might you notice in the next few months? And then think about a time when you were happiest. What was going on then? What do you think you would have to do to feel like that again? And I should also mention that we only ask that the students watch a minimum of 3 videos. Of course, they can watch as many as they want. And then we ask them to go through 4 or 5 of the discussion questions, the ones that they find most relevant or interesting to them. So then for the 4th step is the follow-up call. The procedures are quite similar to the initial call. Essentially, during that initial call, the student will schedule their follow-up voice or video call. Again, if a student misses an appointment, then a YVAPE coach will proactively call them on successive days for up to 7 attempts. And then like the initial call, a reminder email is sent to the student, parent, and school after 5 missed calls. And then the student, of course, also receives the text message. And this call can last typically around 15 minutes. But again, the student can talk to the coach for as long as they'd like. The YVAPE coaching topics for the follow-up call are essentially to check in with the students, see how things have been going since we last spoke to them, to review the videos, see what the student thought about them, did they learn anything, did anything stand out to them, discuss whether there were any changes in their nicotine and marijuana use behavior, as well as addressing any questions the student may have. And then for the nicotine protocol, the coaches will also invite the student to utilize other Kick It California services, particularly if the student wants to work on cessation. If the student is interested, the coach can complete the intake call for Kick It California cessation program right then during that call, or they can schedule that for a time where the student has more availability. Currently, we're only providing psychoeducation for marijuana rather than cessation services. So for the marijuana protocol, YVAPE refers out students to SAMHSA's national helpline if they want help like developing a marijuana quit plan. We are hoping that this is going to be able to change potentially next school year, though. And then completion of the follow-up call now completes the program. We previously used to also send out a post-program survey, but we have just recently removed that so that students aren't penalized for not completing that part of the program, which really helped us more than anyone else. And so we've moved some of those kind of like substance use questions into the follow-up call. Typically, the program takes students around 2 to 12 days, depending on the student's availability, when they want to schedule the call and whether they pick up. Our minimum completion time right now is 2 days. We have that initial call, and then they can watch the videos and discussion, and then the next day they could do the follow-up call. We are, though, in the process of potentially developing a 1-day version as well that we might be launching next school year.
All right. So one thing I'd like to mention is that YVAPE just currently moved to passive consent. So no longer are they using the DocuSign where a student needs to get permission from parents or a parent signature. More information about that is available on their website. And again, I'm going to be sharing Dr. Lenneman's contact information and other information about YVAPE that you can explore if you are interested in this program. But from here, we're going to look at some promising practices with some school districts that we work closely with. Some of these school districts are utilizing one of these programs, sometimes several or all of these programs, with their own sort of twist on how they implement these into their district. One thing to mention is that these schools, these school districts work closely with our Tier 2 TUPE funding. So they're going to talk a lot about how they funded these programs. That might include hiring, TUPE coordinators. But please know that in order to do this work, to use these programs, you don't necessarily need the TUPE funding. This is just how we have worked closely with these districts through the Tier 2 grant. If you are interested in TUPE funding and the Tier 2 grant, you can let us know, contact Mark or Derek Reed in our offices as they oversee that grant. So first, we're going to hear from Katie Burkhart from Alhambra Unified School District, and she's going to share what Alhambra School District does. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and let Katie take over.
Thank you, Linnell. All right, I'm hoping that everybody can see my screen here. I am Katie Burkhart from Alhambra Unified School District. My title for the last couple of years has been Instructional Specialist, and I work in the Student Support Services Division here at the district, and I also fill the role of TUPE Coordinator. Alhambra Unified School District is just outside LA for those of you who don't know. We have about a 16 square mile radius. We serve sort of a tri-city area of 4 cities: Alhambra, Monterey Park, Rosemead, and San Gabriel. And one of our high schools also gets the majority of their students from the Garvey Elementary School District, so we have partnership with them as well. So a little more about AUSD, just for context, we have 13 elementary schools and 3 comprehensive high schools. We're kind of split evenly in our demographics between Latino students and Asian students, and then 3% of our students are identified as 2 or more races. We have lots of students in our district for whom English is not their first language, and about 65% are identified as low income, foster youth, etc. So a little bit more about me. As an IS for Student Support Services, my primary job is supporting the TUPE program here in the district, but I also take on some of the work in initiatives in our district for anti-bias education and promoting restorative practices in the classroom. What I've seen as a teacher, I was a high school English teacher for 25 years before I took this position. What I saw, especially in the past 5 or 6 years, was what this image reflects, which is a lot of students just kind of going through the motions. I'm fine, even when you check in with them, right? I'm fine. But underneath the surface, they needed a lot of help. So my prior work, prior to taking this position, fits really well into sort of what the principles of the TUPE program are and how we implement them in our school district. So we know that suspension does not solve problems for kids, right? My assistant superintendent here says we can't, punish pain. And a lot of the reason why students are involved in these kinds of behaviors is because they are masking some level of pain. So suspension does not solve those problems. In fact, it can exacerbate them. So what we need is the intervention, and that's what our district stands, because it results in fewer risk factors, less substance use, and helpful to our schools, especially less use on campus, right? So in the past, and I was a teacher before becoming this the TUPE coordinator, and this is where I was too. I was not in the loop, and I think Linnell talked about the importance of communication earlier. I would be worried about a student's behavior in class. I'd be, suspicious of some of the behaviors, and I would send them to the office, or I would make a referral, and then the student would come back, and I knew nothing about what happened, what kind of discussions took place, what kind of reach out or check-in to the student was done. I just lived in that question mark space. And I think it's really important for people to know, and I've made it one of my main priorities in this position, is to communicate what happens in those question marks, right? But we also know that unlike other behaviors, substance use at school harms the student involved mainly, and our approach should be on helping and not punishing them. Positive, our district is a restorative justice district. We do use restorative justice principles when it comes to all of the disciplinary actions that we take. So we use PBIS. We have a embedded social emotional learning curriculum that is done throughout our district, and then we use restorative justice practices for disciplinary issues. And we know that these restorative practices work, right, because they go to the quadrant there with the with, right? They are restorative, they're collaborative, and their aim is to make the student feel connected to what's happening in their school and with the adults at their school. So the AUSD TUPE program is part of the Student Support Services division, and this poster on the left here was made into posters last year for every school site, and also stickers that we hand out district-wide, and that QR code takes us to the Alhambra Unified School District Student Support Services website, of which TUPE is a part. And our shared understanding in TUPE, and this is what I try to share with all of the adults that work in our district, is that the best way to help people not use substances on school grounds is to help them stop using substances, right? And punitive measures are not going to do that. So in AUSD, students who violate tobacco policies, marijuana policies should be approached in a supportive way that focuses on encouraging them to quit using drugs, alcohol, or tobacco products. So this is a flow chart that shows the support services that we use in AUSD. Our district has made posters of these as well, and they are on every campus and every office and classroom. Wherever they're needed, they go. And our district uses this to sort of guide our response to incidences involving use or possession of substances. So this is shared digitally with all teachers and administrators, and then put up in offices and classrooms across the district. And what it shows is sort of this progressive discipline policy when it comes to substance use. And the policy is data-driven as well. We look at our California Healthy Kids and our Youth Truth surveys, which are done every year. Youth Truth, I think, is done in the fall, and the California Healthy Kids survey is done in February. And this justifies the support over punishment model, which is the phrase that I use when I'm talking to adults in our district, including teachers and parents. So the restorative justice approach is sort of embedded in everything that I share with administrators, who are usually, especially assistant principals, who are usually the first responders when it comes to these issues. So I share a Google folder with administrators at the beginning of every year that has documents in it that include hyperlinks for quick access to all of the forms, whether it's the TUPE contract or the referral form, the referral form for intervention. And it also includes this document, which has a little script here for how to respond to students that are initially brought in for suspicion of use. And it uses that sort of restorative justice approach and encourages connection over kind of a punitive response. These are the examples of our contracts. So we have an elementary TUPE contract and a secondary TUPE contract. There's also embedded in there a Google form referral, which is how we do referrals for intervention. It's on a Google form. The Google form comes directly to me as the TUPE coordinator, and then I reach out to the schools to set up time to go and meet the students. When we talk to students, and this is administrators, I share this with administrators, I share this with teachers, and I share this with parents as well, using sort of person-first language, so avoiding using labels or adjectives to describe students, asset-based approach, focusing on strengths instead of deficits, and then obviously using brief interventions and healthy futures, which you have already heard about today, as a student-centered approach. It treats every student as an individual and works at engaging with them meaningfully. So we do use brief intervention in our district. I am one of the main staff members that facilitate the brief intervention program in our district. So it's usually me. Last year, it was last August, we did train all of our mental health counselors and school-based counselors in brief intervention, so that if there is a situation where I can't get to the student as quickly, maybe I am have a heavy caseload already, I can reach out to the counselors or the mental health counselors at each site, and they are trained in brief interventions, and they can also do facilitate the workshop or the session. The brief interventions I do use with students as young as 6th grade. Usually I'm using it for 8th through 12th, and again, supportive and inclusive strategies. I think what Ira Sackhoff talked about is really important with how we approach students. I think that's a really important part of brief intervention. So it's intervention facilitated by school staff. Like I said, this was covered in the presentation presentations prior to mine. So motivational interviewing and stages of change. I do embed a little bit of education in there, especially if the student is interested. If the student has questions that I can answer, we talk about that. It is usually 3 to 4 one-on-one sessions. In my district, we do one pre-session, and then we do session 1, session 2, and a follow-up. And like I said, we've trained people in our district beyond just myself. Prior to this year, I was the only person in the district that was trained on how to do brief interventions. And it's a lot. Going out to every single school that refers students was a lot. So it's been really helpful to build capacity in that area. And the Healthy Futures curriculum provides an opportunity to work with younger students. And I have done small groups in the elementary schools and individual sessions using Healthy Futures. This is a poster that I made last year to better understand sort of what our services are, and so that I could communicate that well with teachers and adults on campus and parents. So we do use through the Stanford, we use the You and Me Together Vape-Free Prevention in 6th grade science and in 9th grade PE. And then from there, that's our tier 1 support. And then from there, we go into tier 2 supports of Healthy Futures, brief interventions. We also have partnerships with outside resources, like we have a connection with the substance use counselors at Maryvale and at Pacific Clinics who can run sessions or one-on-one counseling sessions. And we also use YVAPE and Kick It California, and I share cessation resources with students if they request them at the end of our brief intervention sessions. This QR code, again, on all of the posters, takes people directly to the referral form. And the referral form in our district has been updated this year to allow a non-punitive pathway to intervention. So before this year, it was only through administrators at each site that a student could access brief intervention through the TUPE office. Now the referral form is for anybody who has a concern about somebody. So counselors can refer even though the student has not yet gotten in trouble. They can proactively refer, parents can refer, students can refer. So we've opened the pathways to intervention, which I thought was really important as well. I do presentations at each site, at each school site for parents. And I took this directly from the brief interventions curriculum. And when I saw this, I thought, as a teacher, I would have loved to have had this, something that I can put in my classroom and remember about how to frame conversations with kids that center compassion. And so these 6 steps of talking to kids about alcohol and drugs, I actually think it's 6 steps to talking about kids about any unwanted behavior. And I think this is the way to do it. And I share this in my presentations and my workshops with parents as well as teachers. Starting last year, we do a PACES, the Student Support Services Division, of which I am a part, does a Parent and Caregiver Empowerment Summit. This year it is on May 3rd. And last year we had a big TUPE presence there. We had TUPE table. We had TUPE funded presenters. And this year I'll be presenting a couple of sessions that are TUPE focused as well. So this is directly for our parent and caregivers in our district and services for them. And just kind of closing out, I really like this idea of like children learn what they live, and they learn how they're treated, and they learn what they see and what they experience every day at school. So you can read this on your own, but I think especially this idea of shame and encouragement and tolerance, right? This is how they learn to feel confident, and this is how they learn to like themselves, and to have faith in themselves and others, and to learn that the world is a nice place in which to live. So thank you again. I am Katie Burkhart, Alhambra Unified School District. I'm pretty sure Linnell will share all of my contact information if anybody has any questions, or if you need any resources that I can share.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie, for being with us today and sharing what your district does. Yes, thank you. And for participants, the share outs today have been shared with us. So we will be sharing PDF versions of their presentations if there's anything that you missed or anything that you want to kind of take a second look at. So thank you. Our next presenters come from Hacienda La Puente Unified School District. Today with us, we have Vanessa Ortiz, and we also have Dr. Karen Dabney Liras, I believe. I hope I said it correctly. Okay.
Good morning.
And good morning.
We also have our Assistant Superintendent of Education here with us. Dr. Rosa Isaiah is with us as well.
Great.
So we're very excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen in just a minute, but I just wanted to really affirm what Ms. Burkhart had just said about the fact that a lot of the students that we're working with are in pain, and that the idea of support over punishment, that's something that we also really believe in the restorative piece that we're going to talk about today. So I just want to thank her for sharing that. So I'm going to share my screen right now, I hope. Give me 1 second. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Karen Dabney Liras. I'm the Executive Director of Student and Family Services for the Hacienda La Puente Unified School District. And I also have with me Ms. Vanessa Ortiz, who will be presenting. She is our counselor on special assignment in student services, and she also serves as a youth court advisor for our program. So what we're going to be talking about today is our Restorative Justice Youth Court. We're very excited. This year we were awarded a CSBA Golden Bell Award recognized for our work. And we're just going to talk a little bit about how it's made an impact in our district, and just a little bit more about the program. And then at the end of everything, if there's questions or you want to get more information, we have information that you can contact us. We would love to have you come out and visit our youth court during a session and see it in person if you have the opportunity to do so. So just a little bit about our district. These are the demographics of our district, and we serve the unincorporated areas of Hacienda Heights, Valinda, as well as the city of La Puente, city of Industry, and parts of West Covina. So our school district, we are about 15,800 students, and we have a total of 27 schools, including our virtual academy, and that is our 14 elementaries, our 4 comprehensive high schools. We have 3 K-8s and 5 middle schools. So our program is specifically focused on grades 6 through 8, and we've looked at data related to our California Healthy Kids surveys, and other surveys that we have, including the LCAP and Pulse surveys, that really showed that the area in which we wanted to focus on where students were struggling was really at that middle school level and sort of the 9th and 10th grade of the high school. So our youth court is open to students 6th through 12th grade. And it's facilitated by our office, and we have our coordinator of the program, Miss Mandy Savalos, and we also have, in addition to Miss Ortiz, we have additional counselors that work with our program, and other volunteers, including a parent liaison. And so when we have, it's been established since 2017. It's a long-standing program that even during the pandemic, the program was able to shift in terms of being they couldn't hold the cases during the pandemic, but they used that to help support with students who are chronically absent. The students served as mentors and peers to help get students re-engaged back in school during the pandemic. And so it has continued. It is fully supported by our board and our district executive cabinet. And the case hearings really allow respondents to accept accountability, and they're engaging with the jury of their peers, and they're able to have their cases heard. And then the students who serve as jurors are also really learning to grow in their skills of empathy and being able to adjudicate the cases in an impartial way. And so when we started out, the program was from 2017 to 23, it was 100% TUPE grant funded. And over time, we were able to work with getting permission from executive cabinet to really almost fully fund the program so that we could use more of our TUPE grant resources for other things. And so presently, since 2023, our district restorative justice youth court is 90% funded by the district, and only about 10% of TUPE grant funds are used. And so that was a way to make it sustainable. It's written into our LCAP. It's something that our district is committed to in terms of funding for the program. And that's some of our students there when we got to bring the Golden Bell home so that they could see it, and they were really excited. We took pictures of each one of them individually holding the Golden Bell, because it would not be possible without all of their hard work. Here are some examples of the types of cases and who should attend youth court. So as I talked about before, the 6th through 8th grade, they're going to be for 48,900 education codes. And these, for the most part, we're really trying to focus on students who they're first time offenders in terms of getting in trouble. This isn't something where kids continue to get in trouble over and over again and get to keep coming back to youth court. Our goal is to address it in this restorative way when they are in trouble for some of the lower level offenses, and being able to have them not come back to see us except when they're serving as a juror. That's the only time we want to see them. And our rate of students, getting into trouble, the recidivism rate is very low. The vast majority of our students, once they've gone through youth court, and again, they're showing up there, and Vanessa will talk in just a minute about the intake, but they're coming to youth court with their parents, either a parent or guardian, someone there that will be in the court with them. And once they've gone through that whole process and really reflected upon what they've done and been able to restore the relationships at their school and their community, and to make the wrongs that they did right, it's very powerful. And we see very few students that continue on the path of getting into trouble. So these are just the ed codes at the bottom. Those are the most common ed codes that will be used for students to be referred to youth court. And I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa, who's going to talk a little bit about the intake process.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for inviting us to highlight our program. About 75% of our cases that we do get in youth court are substance related infractions. So we start with the student intake process. And the most important thing here is that our students come to us not as a defendant. They come to us as respondents because they have to admit guilt in order to be part of our youth court program. One of our main goals is for them to be held accountable. So when they come, there are two different types of referrals we get. So one can be sometimes an alternative to a suspension, and then the other one is other means of correction. So depending on if the student has already been suspended, then this would be other means of correction. We would meet with the student and one of the parents or the guardian. If they are currently on suspension, they are welcome to come into our department during the day while they're on suspension, and we meet with them. The intake takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. If it is an alternative to suspension, then we meet with the student and the parent after their school day. So they come in, we give them all the information they need on the case hearing night, what date that you will be assigned. We have our case hearings every other week on Tuesday evenings. We give them advice on how to dress appropriately for court. We want them to take this seriously. We give them a tour of where the youth court will be held and what the layout looks like. A lot of times we want to make sure that our student and the parent, when they come in, they aren't surprised by the way the room is set up and how it is actually mocking a courtroom. So we want them to feel comfortable. We want them to come in and for it to be a very welcoming and restorative process. We can go on to the next slide.
And I just wanted to add at the bottom of that slide where it talks about how completion of the disposition, the student, parent, and school will be notified of program completion. I'm thinking back to what Ms. Burkhart was saying when she was a teacher, how a lot of times she didn't know what was going to happen. So I think that communication is extremely important because, like you said earlier, if people see the kid back in school or, they just assume that nothing happened. So there is a big communication piece to that.
Okay, so the logistics of our youth court, as I mentioned earlier, we host youth court twice a month. We do start our first case at 4:15. We typically have anywhere from 1 to 4 cases on a 4-case night. Our jurors are with us until a little bit after 7 o'clock. And we also have our service jurors joining us. Our youth court judge is one of our school administrators. We make sure that each case is confidential. So if we are hearing a case from, let's say, the middle school that our administrator is the assistant principal at, then we will have a guest administrator come in, our guest judge, just for that one case. We like to make sure that everything is confidential. We do not have any jurors listening to any of our cases that would have a conflict of interest. So we do our due diligence in terms of when we're getting ready to host these meetings, where we are going back and we're looking at enrollment. Has the respondent and any of our jurors ever been at the same school at the same time? So that we make sure both the jurors and the respondents feel very comfortable. Depending on the night, we have anywhere from a 6 to a 10-person jury. We currently have about 14 regular jurors. A lot of them are very active in other programs in our district and at their schools. So there are times where they can't attend each one of our youth court nights, but on average, we have about 6 to 10. And then we usually have anywhere from 2 to 3 service jurors who were former respondents and have been assigned a jury service. All participants are sworn to an oath of confidentiality that includes the coordinator that is in the room and all of our advisors. Okay, and then we have our case timeline. So the hearing typically takes anywhere to 45 minutes to an hour. At the end of the hearing, the students will receive a disposition and the jury service that is required of them, depending on how our jury felt. Sometimes they only assign one jury service to the respondent. Other times they want them to come back 2 or 3 times. Our respondents have about 30 days to complete the disposition, like Dr. Dabney shared earlier. Once it is completed, we will fill out the disposition completion form. That gets mailed off to the school site. It gets mailed off to the parent. Everyone is informed, and then we do go ahead and we reverse the suspension. Dr. Dabney actually takes care of that once the disposition has been completed. So if by any chance a student does not complete their disposition, then we inform the school. And usually if there was already a suspension, it is upheld, or if it was other means of correction, then other consequences may be implemented. But for the most part, I would say we usually have about 100% completion of our dispositions. So it goes really well. And a lot of times our service jurors come back in, and after serving like 1 or 2 times, they will often ask us how can they become part of the program, if they can stay on with us. So we have some really good success stories of some of our jurors were actually respondents, and that's how we first met. And they've really taken the lead in terms of being a part of this program and giving back to, everyone in the community. We can go to the next slide. So it was nice to hear from YVAPE and some of our other programs. We use these resources district-wide. These are interventions for some of our students that are caught vaping with tobacco or other substances. But we also use these in youth court. So our youth court jurors have the opportunity to assign a student to YVAPE. We do assign students to YVAPE very often. We've had a lot of parents come back and tell us how they really love the program. We have mental health referrals that our jurors can assign students to. A lot of times they will, because the parent joins the student at youth court and we can see the dynamics of the family, there's sometimes where they will even suggest that the family attend family counseling. They have access to online modules on cyberbullying, mindfulness, character counts, positive self-advocacy skills, and everything that we have available to us from the Stanford Toolkit, as well as Healthy Futures and Kick It California. So depending on what the referral was for, our jurors have a handout where they get together. Our respondent and the parent are asked to leave the room after the jury has heard the respondent's case. And they take that opportunity to deliberate for about 15 to 20 minutes. An advisor is overseeing the whole deliberation, and there's a lot of great discussion that goes on in terms of our jurors assigning a disposition that they believe is fair and that they believe will help the respondent reflect. So it's really good, healthy communication between the jurors. Like Dr. Dabney mentioned, we're more than happy to have visitors come and check out the process, because it's amazing. We kind of just stand back as advisors. Once in a while, we have to come in and, because we have jurors that want to give 5 hours of community service and some that want to give 10 hours, and there's a healthy discussion. So sometimes we'll come in and we'll be the middleman. But it's really a neat process to see. So these are some of our resources that are available to be put into our dispositions. We can go to the next one. So some of the challenges in youth court are that, it is a restorative program. It's not meant to be very punitive. We want to encourage positive identity with our respondents and some self-reflection. We like to give them a positive social network of support with their jurors when they come back. A lot of times you can't really determine which of our jurors are our original members and which are our jury service jurors because we welcome them back as one of our own. So all of our jurors are impartial, but that is one of the challenges we've had. You know, we sometimes will run a suspension report and we will reach out to the school sites and we'll say, hey, we think this is a great candidate for our youth court. So we have had some schools that are hesitant. You know, they feel like the suspension, it should be punitive and they're kind of hesitant to go the youth court route. But we have gotten a lot of our school sites to jump on board, especially with our administrators coming in and they serve as judges, so they're able to see the whole process. It's really come together since 2017. Another thing is some people may question whether or not our jurors can be impartial, and all of our jurors receive training in ethics, confidentiality, and restorative questioning. They have templates that they use. We have our adult coordinators on site with them the whole time. They go through an extensive training process at the beginning of every school year, regardless if they are a returning juror or a new juror. So really, this program has come a long way and we're starting to get a lot of buy-in district-wide. We can go to the next one. And then here you can see some of our testimonials from everyone from our superintendent while we were at the Golden Bell ceremony in December. We have testimonials from some of our former respondents and some of our youth court jurors. And we've even had testimonials from parents. We have a lot of parents that will come back and they really enjoy the program because we like to make sure that this remains confidential. Youth court isn't necessarily something that we offer to everyone, and it's not necessarily promoted to the community. All of our school sites get information on youth court, the referral process. We also have our Google Drive where we hand over all of the documents to them. 3 times a year, we have our administrator updates where our student and family services department goes over how to refer a student, what type of referrals we would like to see. We talk about the disposition and the whole process with them. So we do have parents that have given testimonials and even some of our administrators, but the program really has come a long way. And then I'll leave these here for you to kind of read on your own. I know Dr. Dabney wanted to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a couple of highlights that that I wanted to cover is that for 2023 to 2024, in terms of our suspension rate, we moved from yellow to green, and we really feel like a huge part of that was the work that all of our sites are really doing to embrace restorative practices. And we've got increased referrals from schools. Like Vanessa was saying, there were a few that were more hesitant, but we have gotten a lot more referrals from schools that are on board. And the other thing I wanted to say is that we had we had a Superior Court Judge, Michael Carter, come out along with Seymour Amster from Parents, Educators, and Teachers and Students in Action from PISA, and they came to visit our program. And they were floored when they realized they watched the whole thing, not knowing what grade each student was in, and they could not believe the 6th graders that how mature they were, because when they do teen court, their teen court, they specifically only work with high school students, and they were just really amazed to see our middle schoolers taking on roles, and they could not tell the difference between who was in 6th grade and 7th grade and who was 11th grader or a 12th grader. Literally, they were really surprised. And so one wonderful takeaway from that whole visit is that we have been asking them for a partnership, that we want to partner with them to expand our program to teen court. They have given a commitment that they want to work with us, and they have found a local judge in the San Gabriel area. So that's going to be like our next growth step for this program, is to add teen court. And teen court would be where we're working with a local judge where students would be able to hear real cases out in the community. So currently right now, our youth court is specifically cases within Hacienda La Puente Unified School District. This would allow it to expand where they're getting some mentorship from local judges and being able to hear cases, misdemeanor cases that would normally maybe go to court could actually be routed to our youth court program. So we're really excited about this partnership that we will be having with teen court and with the LA County Superior Court. And then
and then I know in the interest of time, I believe we have less than 5 minutes left. Yeah, but we would be more than happy to answer any questions you have. All of our information is there at the bottom. Our coordinator is actually Amanda Ceballos. She's the A. Amarana and HLP email. Any forms that you would like to see, if you want to come and stop by one of our youth court nights, we'd be more than happy to host for you so you can see it in person. But I will hand it back over to Linnell.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for that invitation. I know that there are a lot of people out there who might be interested in seeing this in action. So I thank you for extending that information. I will definitely include all of your contact information in the email. But also thank you for joining us and sharing what you are doing with Youth Court in Hacienda La Puente Unified School District.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for having us, LACO. We're happy that you were able to invite us, and we're happy to be here to discuss a little bit about Torrance Unified and our TUPE grant and how we've rolled out our specific district intervention plan with TUPE grant. So I'm Nancy Gutierrez. I'm a coordinator for family community engagement and the homeless foster liaison for Torrance Unified. And we have Monica here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Pavlovich. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist and the TUSD 2B coordinator.
All right, so we'd like to introduce you to our team and also to what Torrance Unified looks like. So our team specifically for the Tier 2 TUPE District Consortium is of course, our director, John Pearson of Student Services. And also I'm the coordinator who's in Student Services. I'm a coordinator of Parent Community Engagement, as I mentioned. And thankfully, due to the grant, we've been able to bring on board Monica to be our TUPE mental health coordinator. And we're very lucky to have her join us from South Bay Children's Health Center to be able to help us roll out our services for the TUPE grant. So we have our website here located in our lower part of the slide so that you can get information if you'd like to see what information we provide for our parents and our community regarding the TUPE grant. We like to have that available in case parents or anybody wants to look at it, for staff to refer to as well if they have any questions, and then they know where to contact us and who we are. Just so that you have an idea of what Torrance looks like, we have 31 schools in our district, so it's a somewhat large school district. So we're spread out in the South Bay region. We're surrounded by the beach cities, and also on the north we have LAUSD schools that are in like Carson, Harper area. So we're going to go ahead and get started and give you an idea of kind of what our TUPE grant looks like and how our intervention has rolled out in the last few years, so that you have an idea of how you might be able to do so in the district that you're in, if it compares to ours, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So we're going to be discussing very briefly how this fits into our disciplinary process and how we're using it in lieu of suspension, one of the components of the TUPE grant. Monica will be going into describing exactly what brief intervention is, what it looks like in our district, and the pieces that are involved in rolling it out in our district. She'll also be discussing some of the success we've had throughout the last few years rolling it out in our district, and then I'll be going over some of the challenges we've had and what our next steps may be. So in terms of discipline, so we found that TUPE and the specific intervention pieces fit really well with our disciplinary program. So our district is very focused on making sure that our students are prepared to contribute and be lifelong learners. And so we're very interested in making sure that we have a tiered response to any misbehavior. And so this really aligns, this specific brief intervention program aligns really well with our progressive discipline approach instead of going to immediately suspend students. So our deans are very involved in that, our assistant principals and principals. So when something happens, they're observing, reporting, of course, for accountability purposes, and then they're doing an initial assessment of the behaviors. So a student may be caught with paraphernalia, they may be caught with specific substance on campus or under the influence. And of course, for accountability purposes, they do have to track those things, and it helps with data collection. But we also want to make sure that we're not just doing everything punitively, right? We want to make sure that we're aligning with the state standards and also guidance on how we want to be a little bit more progressive discipline and focus on awareness and the educational component. So we're trying to foster a more positive school climate, hopefully reducing some recidivism for those students. And it perfectly aligns with our health initiatives in the district that we're trying to promote more wellness and overall for our students. So it has helped us to increase awareness and increase educational awareness for our students and our parents as well. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and talk about how we have established communication regarding TUPE in our district, and also how it has helped us roll out the brief intervention program in our district. So we have, of course, our district coordinator. So we were able to bring on Monica to coordinate the services across the district with our secondary schools in our district. We also have school site leads, because they're the ones that we train annually on what services are available for TUPE. We give them guidance and support so that they're not doing a lot of the TUPE legwork, but they're the lead at their school site. And then they communicate with their deans, with their counselors, and also Monica helps coordinate the therapists and the social workers who may be going out to implement the services along with our interns. So we've slowly established different people across the district who communicate with our district coordinator, which is Monica, who coordinates all of it with the school site leads, and then the people who actually go out and either are referring students to us or implementing the service. So that has helped quite a bit to have that communication across the district. So then I'll have Monica go ahead and explain to you how brief intervention has been rolling out in our district.
Hello, everyone. I'll start with the definition of brief intervention. It is an evidence-based, short-term educational and counseling intervention for adolescents who have a short history of substance use, either have tried it for the first time or are just starting to experiment. They are not yet addicted and or dependent on any of the substances, and they are not necessarily ambivalent about changing their use. At Torrance Unified, in conjunction with LACO, we are able to offer a training for our staff at the beginning of every school year. We include some of our counselors, we include some of the therapists assigned to the middle schools and high schools, and also our interns that we get every year. It has been a great addition to the brief intervention program and allowed us to roll out the services to all our middle schools and our high schools. We have 8 middle schools and 4 high schools and a continuation school. Next, I will be talking about the implementation process. We have created here at Torrance a Google form that we have shared with our school site leads, our deans, our counselors, our therapists at each school site. So they go ahead, fill out the form, I receive it, I review it, and then I assign it to either myself, one of the interns, or a counselor or therapist at the school site if the interns and myself, our caseloads are full in terms of our BI calendars. I then go ahead and send an email to whoever the referring party is at each of the school site. Again, it could be a teacher, a dean, assistant principal, principal. Let them know that the student has been assigned a BI counselor, and include the BI counselor in the email. And from that point, we move on to the school site delivery. The school contact and the BI counselor communicate either via email or phone, discuss the referral, the incident. The school site lead goes ahead and provides a confidential space, whether it's a classroom or an office, for the school in order for the BI counselor to provide 3 to 4 sessions of BI. And once BI is completed, they send over a summary via email to the referring party. Again, because the process is confidential, only stating the dates that they met with the student, whether or not the student was open and willing to participate in the program, and if there is a need for further referral to a community partner, whether it be in the substance use arena and or mental health arena, then that is also explained and noted in the email. After the email is sent, then the BI counselor speaks to the referring party, making sure that the referring party takes the lead in contacting parent and making the linkage to either an in-house therapist if mental health is going to be referred to the student, and or a community agency in the substance use arena. At that point, then the BI referral is closed. Some of the successes in rolling out the BI program at Torrance Unified is that we are very proud of our service delivery. We are usually able to assign the student within a week of the referral. We found that this is great because then we can address the issue pretty much as immediately as it occurred on school site. Over the years of the 2P program, we have seen the referrals increase, and we are getting more referring parties. At first, we started with the deans and the APs, and then it segued into school counselors and the therapists, and a lot more people are referring the students to get the support that they needed and may have not gotten in the past. We are currently in the process of training more of our staff. At the beginning, it was myself, a few of the social workers from the district and the interns, and now we have extended it to our counselors and our therapists that are at each individual school site. Another success from rolling out the program is the flexibility to provide ongoing services. Yes, the main focus is to help the student understand and make better choices in regards to substance use, but we also are able to address any other needs and see maybe there's a mental health issue that the student may need support. There's family stuff going on, housing issues, and we can address and link the student and the family to services that will make their everyday struggles less. Now I will turn it over to Nancy, and she will continue with some of the difficulties that we have seen.
So one of the things I did want to highlight has been helpful to have Monica on board because she is a licensed mental health practitioner. That flexibility for ongoing services has been great because there, in some occasions, we've made exceptions to extend the services when they need mental health counseling from a therapist until we can connect them to mental health services either on campus or off campus. So that's been a great success by having her as part of our team and our coordinator. We've been able to address not only the substance abuse, but their need for mental health support. So going on to challenges, of course, whenever we roll out anything, there are going to be inevitable challenges that we face because we can't account for everything that might be happening. So one of the things that we did experience was that at the beginning, we realized that a lot of the school site leads that are 2P coordinators at their school sites were not the deans. And so they're not the ones that are actually implementing the disciplinary process at their school site. They're not the ones catching students and actually seeing those things occur. So although there was communication between those school site leads and the deans, it wasn't perfect and it didn't always happen. And we did see that some deans would refer and some deans wouldn't. So we've worked on that in the last couple of years to increase that communication piece and make sure that our deans know about the program, know how to refer, and have a connection to Monica so that it's more consistent across the district. We've also seen the second and third bullet here kind of refer to something that we've seen that we've kind of had to work case by case because there are some students where we're seeing significant drug use that's really beyond the scope of what brief intervention could be. Monica described how it's more for students who are just starting out, who are not quite really addicted yet, who are not significantly using. And so those students, when we do see them that are having significant issues, we're having to address them case by case and troubleshoot, which again, having Monica on board, being a licensed therapist was really helpful in that regard so that we can kind of address what would be the best route for resource referral for those students, which is very similar to the next one, which is students who are being caught for third or fourth offenses. For our second offenses, we are referring to YVAPE. So our school sites can refer because it does have not only the student component, but it has a parent component, which has been helpful for once a student has referred for a second time, YVAPE can be used for that process. So it's been really helpful for that second, but if there are students who are using third and fourth offenses, that's where we're not being able to use that service. So we have to troubleshoot and figure out, again, maybe what might be helpful for those students at that level. But we are trying to come up with individual case-by-case situations there. So our next steps, as we're facing, changes in our program, we're trying to figure out how we might streamline things and make things even better. We're trying to streamline our referral and also our data collection process. So it's been, really helpful to have some data, but I think as we're starting to go through this, we're realizing that it might be helpful to really be able to address a few more data points so that we can analyze the success of our program, which schools are referring which students, looking more at the outcomes for our students, and kind of finding out where we might be able to do a little bit more work and look at all of the stuff that's happening across the district. Are we being as consistent as possible? Are there certain areas where we might be able to improve? Also, we're continuing to strengthen our relationships with our deans and our school counselors because we would like this to be consistent across the district. So that's where we're also concentrating our efforts. So we want to leave it there. We'd like to thank you for your time. If you'd like to reach out with any questions, we've left our email below where you can reach any of us that's part of the team. So Building Bridges at TUSD, we'll all get it. And also, we wanted to share with you the website that we mentioned at the beginning. If you'd like to check it out, it does have a few drop-down menus to give you information about our two-pay program. And we are open to questions if you'd like to reach out to us. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have some time, we appreciate you taking a brief survey to let us know how you liked today's presentation. What kind of presentations, trainings, and webinars would you like to see in the future? And once again, all of these resources, this recording, PowerPoints, share outs of some of the worksheets and things will all be sent to you in an email by the end of the